Hey there, Wendy here with Jazzydoodledesigns, and today we're going to do our first color along in Makiko Iatome's Yuzuri mouse, and this is going to be my first color along in my Japanese coloring books, and you guys know I'm obsessed. I've bought so many, but I'm going to do a buddy color with Christine. We did a buddy color a while back with the Christmas cats. So we're going to do one. We chose this page, a little simpler page. So I thought I would kind of walk you through my thought process of how I pictured this page and what I'm planning to do. So first off, I am picturing maybe kind of orange-red kind of berries. To me, these don't really look like what I would call holly. So I'm going to go with more of a orange-red for the berries, and then kind of like a more olivey green for the little leaves here. And of course we got our snow, so we're going to have some white in there. And then just a brown. I think I'm going to go with a brown branch as opposed to the green. We'll see. I might pull some green into that branch. And then as far as for the bird, I've been debating because I'm not sure what kind of bird this is. If it's supposed to be like a robin, or if it's some sort of chickadee or a finch. So I'm just kind of going to color it the way I want. So I'm thinking kind of a red-yellow breast, and then coming in with browns and grays for the rest of the bird. Now, I am going to try using Lafranc, that emulsion paint that I bought. I am going to use it to kind of white out this little patch right here, because I have been impressed with that paint because you can use colored pencil on it. So I hope I don't mess this up. But because I have tried in the past to use, Posca marker and things like that to white out the lines before I started. And I didn't really like the outcome. But I did a little experimenting, and I think I can pull it off with this paint. So we're going to give that a try. The worst thing that can happen is, I have to pull out gouache or something and paint the whole thing. But that's my thought, is to kind of lighten these up to where there isn't this piece that to me looks, I could just go in and put my colors in here and have this blend into the white body, which I think is what the artist was thinking. But I thought it'd be a good test to see if we can pull this off. And I would pull that color down a little bit and make it a little more blendy. So that's what I'm going with. And then as far as the background, I am thinking Neocolor 2s in light gray and a little bit of yellow in, and maybe these are the colors I was thinking. So this is silver gray, light gray, Sahara yellow, and salmon pink. And those will be the ones that I am going to be using for the background, at least in my mind. That's what I'm going to use. We'll see once I start getting it on paper. I pulled out beige and regular gray. And depending on how they lay down on this paper, I will go from there. This is pretty decent paper, so I don't anticipate any sort of problem. So let's go. Hey, welcome everybody to the first color along of 2024. I hope your new year has started off fantastic. I am excited. I am finally working in my Japanese coloring book. Thank you, Christine, for encouraging me by doing a buddy color with me. So Christine was our winner for my 1,000 subscriber giveaway, and we've done a couple of buddy colors since, so that's been really fantastic. So at the end of this video, I will show you her picture as well as my own. But first, let's talk about what I'm doing here. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just laying down some Neocolor 2, and I want to create kind of a light dreamy background, kind of like like the old photography backgrounds where everything's just kind of like blurry colors in the back, and it's just, you know, that kind of background, because I really want my bird to stand out. So you can do this with any colors. You don't have to have my specific colors. You could do this with any colors that appeal to you. But what I'm doing is just dividing it up with little pops of color in an area. And not much of the color. It really doesn't take much because I don't want that color to overpower that silver gray kind of color that I'm going for in the background. You know, that light gray with various tones. I want that to be my predominant color. Now in my bird, I'm going to be doing kind of a red and yellow breasted bird. So I really wanted to pull in that salmony kind of color and that yellow color, just to pull those colors out of my bird. Now this beige I really like in the backgrounds because it kind of tones down that gray a little bit and warms it. I shouldn't say tones it down, it kind of warms it up a little bit. The idea is you just keep going back and forth, adding your color until the entire background is filled. Now bear in mind, I think and I'm not a professional, guys. I have a lot to learn with this, but what I have experienced is these have kind of a waxy base to them. So by laying these down and completely filling the page, when you add your water, that wax kind of acts as a resist that keeps the color from seeping through. It kind of acts like a barrier. So the other thing I've noticed is if you add too little color and you don't have enough pigment, then what can happen is it's harder for the pigment to dissolve. I don't know why this is, but I have found, if you notice when I'm laying down color, even though I'm only putting color here and there, when I do lay it down, I'm not like grinding it into the paper, but I'm not going ultra soft either. You want to, don't be afraid to put the pigment down, I guess is what I'm saying. Now, you don't have to have every teeny tiny square inch covered, but what I have found is if you don't lay enough down, the water seeps into the paper and it makes it harder for the color to move into that area. It opens up the likelihood that it's going to seep into your next page on the back. And I don't find that they dissolve and blend as well. So don't be skimpy with your Neocolors. Guys, I've had these for years. You'll see, even after using all the gray that I do on this, look how much you can't even hardly tell that I've used it. It just doesn't take a lot of pigment from the crayon. So don't be stash. Now, normally if you are blending with your Neocolors, you want to go light to dark, because if you don't, then all the colors just kind of, the dark colors take over and will saturate your entire image. But because my lighter gray, I have so much more lighter gray than I do, say, that blue, it doesn't do that. So I am only tapping off when I feel like I've got a little too much water. Not so much that I'm worried about blending these colors. I want a very blendy, blurry kind of background. When you're using neocolors, though, you might not always want that. So be cautious of that. The other thing is if you were to lay these neocolors down, let's say horizontally, and your main strokes are kind of horizontal strokes, then when you use your water brush, you want to use horizontal strokes to blend it out. Don't go across it because it won't dissolve as well. Now with this, I used a lot of circular motions. I went in a lot of different directions because I want that kind of mottled, blurry, distorted kind of background. So that is the technique for what I'm doing. Just make sure that you don't look at what I'm doing and say, oh, I can willy-nilly put neocolors down in a flower petal, for example, and have it turn out the way you want it to. You want to go in the direction that is most natural. So like in these leaves, you want to go, with the leaf, not across the leaf, if that makes sense. Now what I'm doing here is I'm going in and just touching the tip of my water brush, see, just right there on the crayon, and applying it to where I feel like I want it to blend a little bit more. Maybe I have a sharp edge, maybe I don't have enough coverage. This is just touching up and altering to get what you want. So like in that area, I wanted that yellow to be a little softer. So I went ahead and applied the gray over it just to soften it down a little bit, because that is what I'm going for. Now that being said, I debated a very long time when I got all done with this image to maybe go in and darken the edges. And that's just one of those things that you just have to make a decision based on, what you like and what your vision is for the piece. I chose not to. I don't know if it's because I have a lot going on in my life and I was like, okay, I'm going to call this done, or whether it's because, I like how this turns out in the end. It doesn't look like much right at the moment, but here you can see I'm adding a little bit more of that purplish blue. And if you add too much, just kind of blend it out with your water, and you can even blot off if you get too much. This is a pretty forgiving medium in a lot of ways. Don't be afraid to play in your books, guys. You have to break this barrier, whether you make a photocopy of it and work on different paper before you go into your book, whether you print it off on better paper, whether you just buy a book that is I would recommend buying a book. Here I'm showing that I was choosing light gray. Now I'm going to use the darker gray. So sorry about that. I had the wrong card up that whole time. I would recommend, if you can afford it, even if you buy it used, like buy a book like Hannah Carlson or Joanna Basford or Kirby that has good quality paper, and just say, this is my experiment book. I am going to try new mediums in this. I don't care what the outcome is. I don't have to show anybody these. This is just for me to learn in. And then experiment with it. that is the best way to learn a medium. Now, I understand budget is a problem for a lot of people, and so that might not be an option. But if you want to grow as an artist, you absolutely have to take risk. And I can promise you this, some of those risks are going to be just trash. They're just going to be fails. And when I say fails, I don't mean it in the negative, like not worth doing, because it's only a failure if you didn't learn something from it. But I can tell you that I have learned that, like in this medium, learning to use your water brush with the direction of your strokes. Ask me how I learned that. I learned that because I went against it and I found it wasn't as effective. Now, these can be reactivated, so you can go back in and soften things up. You can go back in with a different color. Now, you can't always fix everything 100%, but you can see here I'm layering colors up and just deciding, what do I want? What do I want this to look like? Oh, I want a little more of the sky blue. I think this is a very beautiful color. I love it a lot with the gray. And you can see here that I can put those in and then soften that color out. I could even blot it with a tissue if I felt like it was too much right there. But because you've laid that wax barrier down, you have a little protection from the water. Now, you want to let your layers dry in between. So, by doing that, see, I can check and just make sure that I didn't have any color coming through. I had a little bit of, the warping of the paper. I'm okay with that. But I also know that I have a video on the channel, and I'll try and link it right here to tell you how to fix that. It works pretty well. Now, you got to be careful. So the way you do that is you spray the back, and then you press it flat with paper towels and with books. Now, you got to be careful. If both sides have water mediums, then don't spray it. But you can still put the paper towels in and go ahead and press it between heavy books or whatever you have that can put some weight on it, and then let it dry overnight. I've even had it dry within an hour, and it flattens it out considerably. 100%, in some cases yes, in some cases no. Depends on the quality of paper you start with and how much water you apply. So that's the other thing that I'll say. With Neo colors, you need to add enough water to get the job done, but be careful. If you are, you may find it's better for you to use a paintbrush and control the water that way. You may find some water brushes add too much water. I like this Pentel one I've been using. I like the Arteza brushes, but I feel like sometimes they give me a little more water than I want. I don't find that they drip or that they malfunction. I just find that it doesn't really give me what I'm looking for. I'll also add that even though I like the Pentel, the next Pentel water brush that I buy might not function the exact same way. So sometimes that does happen as well. So make sure you test every water brush before you start a new project, just so you know how this particular one behaves. So here I'm just adding in a little more color just to give it a little interest. Because while I like the gray because it's going to make my bird pop out, I want it to be interesting as well. And I feel like the kind of blue purple and this turquoise blue and the yellow and a little bit of that salmon all kind of just bring the background to life a little. Okay, let's start our bird. And I forgot to get my cards out, so I'm just using cream. These are Prismacolor pencils. I know, guys, I really struggle to not use Prisma just simply because I absolutely love their palette. I struggle to find another set of pencils that I like the palette as much. Don't get me wrong, I like the way Prismacolor work. I can make most any pencil work, but I always pick a project based on the palette. I shouldn't say always, but a lot of times. Now, one thing that I didn't catch on camera, because, I'm an idiot, is that I did use that vinyl emulsion Lafranc Bourgeois vinyl emulsion paint to white out a little bit of the lines on his breast, just right there where I'm coloring right there. And I think that paint did a really good job. And I'm not struggling a lot to cover it. Now, I'm going to do some more experiments with it to see how much or how little I should use. There is ever so slightly a change between where it is and where it isn't, but the overall effect when I'm done, I'm very happy with, because like right now, you can't even see where that real dark line was. And I just really didn't like that dark line on his breast. Now, maybe there was supposed to be like a color change there or a tuft of shadow or something like that. I'm not sure. But it just wasn't something that I was gelling with. So I'm just going in and just ever so lightly going over things. I want the bulk of this bird to be kind of this gray-brown color. And then, he's got his little red breast with the beige or the cream color there in it. So I wish I could tell you, like, well, I specifically put the color here because I can't, unfortunately, it's just one of those, like, I don't know. It's like when I'm coloring, that's where I think it should go. Christine asked me if I used a specific reference. I looked at robins and finches were the two birds that I felt like this, maybe a house finch, where I felt like it kind of matched. And so I kind of took a little bit of inspiration with the robin redbreast, but not 100% because I just kind of went rogue after that. So this is one of those things with adult coloring that I really like, is that there is no one sitting here telling me, well, Wendy, well, my husband does, but we ignore him because, we've been married over 23 years, so we just ignore him. He's really good with animals, so he's like, well, squirrels aren't supposed to have that big of a tail, or, he always tells me, well, that's not the right color. They're not supposed to be orange, they're supposed to be red, and, I just tell him in my world they can be whatever I want them to be, and he just laughs and walks away. But because he's mainly just doing it to see if he can get a rise out of me. But anyway, so I do encourage you to look at inspiration and look at images, and sometimes I use references and I really try and match it. In this case, I just didn't really find a bird that I felt looked like this one or how I wanted this bird to look. So I looked at them, took the gray brown cues from them, took the red in the breast, and then, took what I wanted from those and moved on. Overall, I'm happy with how it turned out. And here, here I'm just, Prismas are known for their blending, but a lot of what I'm doing in this bird is a little more layering. And, especially in this brown gray area, I am just kind of laying in the color and then topping it with another color. That way, some parts are a little more brown gray, some parts are a little more gray brown. In one of the reference photos, this bird had some gray right there where the red meets its head, like behind its eye there. And I did kind of take inspiration from that. But, just kind of layer it up and add color and really allow your inspiration to take over and be like, well, I think it needs a little more of this color or that color. So once again, layering in a little bit of this terracotta, giving him a little bit more of a red head, a little bit more of a blend there. I probably should have stopped before I put in this poppy red. I kind of liked it better a little more muted because the rest of the page is a little more muted. But tell me what you think, because I do tend to I like punchy colors. I like the deep saturation, and it's funny because in my life, like my clothes and stuff, I'm very much a neutral kind of girl. You don't see me wearing, I'll wear turquoise, but like today I am wearing, in this video I'm wearing a dark red. In the voiceover, Wendy is wearing like an olive green turtleneck because it's like -3 today. We have had a cold snap. Supposed to be popping out of it. We're supposed to hit 30 today. I hope we do. And then moving into 40s and 20s, and then all next week we're supposed to be in the 40s. So I can kind of live with that. But my turtleneck's kind of like that marine green. Very similar. A little more olivey, but very similar. I like those kind of colors on me. I have a little bit, my hair's a little red-brown. I should probably pop on a video one day and introduce my hands to my face so, so that Jazzydoodledesigns is more than just hands. Maybe Ellie and I will pop in one day and introduce ourselves. But now here I'm doing a little bit more of the blending technique, meaning, going from the darker color to the lighter color to the lighter color, and not so much of layering to get that color. Although I'm going to be doing more than one layer on this. I'm not necessarily going to be layering different colors over it. It'll be the same colors to add that saturation, and that helps with the actual blending process. Here I added the ginger root to the end because to me it's supposed to be winter. These leaves shouldn't be vibrant and like grass green or anything. So here I'm just going back in with that same color I started with and just doing another light layer. Now as I get closer to the second color, you want to lighten your pressure up a little bit, and you want to make some jagged little, you don't want it to be a straight line across like a block. You want to add some little jaggedies, and then that way when you put the next color in, and you see I even pulled it all the way almost to that ginger root here and there. That's what makes your blend look smoother. And I'm not perfect at this, but here I'm going over it lighter, so all the way into that second color, but very, very light. Now when I go in with that lime peel, I'm doing the exact same thing, but I'm actually pushing into the ginger root a little bit. Now, with this color, I don't want to push too far into the ginger root because I don't want to lose the lightness of that tip. But in the green, I'm okay with a little bit of layering there for the blend. Now, I'm not sure what that line is that goes from the bird to the leaf. I think it just got away from the artist a little bit. I wish I would have saw that when I was whiting stuff out, and I probably would have whited it out with that emulsion vinyl paint, just because I think it looks kind of weird. Now here I'm going in with an even darker color. So this is a sepia and kind of a gray brown. You could use a different color brown, like a dark brown, but that would give it a warmer tone than this. You could use like a 70% French gray would be good in there. Even test your grays. You could pick a warm or a cool gray as well. But I just really like deepening it up a little bit. Now I'm going back in and adding in that marine green. And you can see how much darker this whole leaf became. So adjust that accordingly, and you can decide maybe you like the look of it better when it wasn't quite as bright or dark. You know what I'm saying. Maybe you liked it a little more muted, I should say. So that is certainly up to you. And sometimes that's one of the benefits of doing a color along, is you can see what the artist did and then adjust accordingly, because you could say, well, I really liked it one step sooner. Once I've done that step, there's no going back. But you can go back because you haven't actually done, that step. I think color alongs are good in that you see a different way of doing things. We all color a little bit differently, and when you color along with someone, I'm going to interrupt myself here. I purposely did not use that marine green on the underside of that leaf. I'm going to leave it a little lighter, which is why my darkest color on that side, on that curled over section, is going to be the lime peel. So that was a conscious decision on my part, and you'll see what I do going forward here. But anyway, we all color a little bit differently, so no matter how good you are as an artist, to do an occasional color along challenges you to break the established pattern that you have. Now, I'm a proponent that if you truly want to get good at colored pencils, you should probably pick one colored pencil brand and use it, because you will really, really begin to understand how they work well together. But the downside to that is that you become, what's the word? I don't know that you become that way, but you will start to see yourself use the same, for example, on these leaves. So you're like, oh, I like how that looks. So the next time you do leaves, you're like marine green, lime peel, ginger root, sepia. Got it. Okay. And it's Whereas when you're using different pencils all the time, you don't have that little crutch to lean on, so you have to make a conscious decision to use a different color combination. Now here I'm adding the artichoke. This adds kind of a brown tinge to the green. It's not too brown, but I really like how it plays off the red in the bird, and to me kind of gives that dying leaf look a little bit. And you can use as little or as much as you want. Now, in true Wendy fashion, I didn't color the little piece of the leaf just below that snow blob, so I would encourage you to do that when you're coloring. But, you know, it wouldn't be a Jazzy Doodle design video without Wendy missing something. So once again, I'm kind of going in with the sepia in the middle here of this leaf. But back to what I was saying with color alongs, if you've ever tried to color along with Chris Chang, you'll be like, oh my gosh. I mean, it's very challenging. And then if you try and color with Karen on My Colorful Country Life, she has a very straightforward process. You know, she uses a 5 or 6 pencil blend, and she uses that throughout her videos. And I tend to use a combination of the two, both a layering and a blending, depending on what I'm using. Sometimes I go light to dark, sometimes I go dark to light. I tend to color what I call with my intuition, meaning I don't sit down and like say to myself, okay, Wendy, you're going to add this, you're going to add that, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. As I go along, I have a general plan. You heard my plan at the beginning of the video, but as we went along, I decided, oh, I want to add that little purple blue and the little turquoise. I didn't talk about those at the beginning of the video. It was just something that as I saw it unfold, I thought those would look good. Once again, here I noticed that I'm an idiot. You know, I knew I wanted that underside of that leaf to be a little lighter, but once I had colored it, then I chose to go ahead and add a little bit of the darker tones because to me it was a little too bright. Now on these berries, you just want to make sure you're leaving some highlight. Now, you should probably think about the direction of the light. Some people are more fussy about that than other people. If you want it to look more realistic, all of your highlights should be generally, you know, in the same direction. We don't want highlights on the bottom of the berry. If you notice, most of mine are to the right hand side, but that one berry has two a little more front facing towards me. I'm okay with that. To me, nobody's going to look at my art and be like, well, you know, but the light source, because this isn't an art piece. Let me rephrase it. It's art. It's not, I'm not trying to be hyper realistic. Is that something that I should probably work on? Sure. And I'm always open to learning more and improving. And it will improve your art inherently because we take in a lot more information at a glance than we even realize. Just like they say that the impression that you make on someone happens in the first, I don't know, it's something ridiculous, like 7 seconds. Same with art pieces. We might not understand why it looks off, but we know it does. So usually it's stuff like that. So I would encourage you, like that one probably shouldn't have two highlights, and the bigger highlight should have been on the top, not the bottom. But once again, Wendy's not going to lose any sleep over this. If you're really wanting that kind of stuff, you should probably check out a whole different channel, because there are people that have been to art school and then can tell you all the things. I'm just trying to make it look quote unquote good. And I'm happy with how it looks. Now here I chose to go over that highlight on the bottom. I think I should probably do that on the next berry up as well. And I might by the time I'm done. But by adding that really light peach in relation to the other reds, you still kind of have a little bit of a highlight without it being quite so garish. Now you can go in and create those highlights with a Posca pen, but if you can leave the little white bits, I think it turns out better in the end. But I have certainly been known to add some white at the end with a Posca pen. So there I'm just kind of creating, nothing fancy here. Little goldenrod, little light umber for the legs. And I decided that since it kind of was the same color as the branch, maybe I should darken up that branch a little bit. So I'm just going in and adding just almost like a texture, just a little pops of sepia to darken it up. No rhyme or reason necessarily, just kind of on the lower side, and then just little pops. And here I'm doing the same thing with the sand, just kind of blending everything out. And by using sand in both of those, it gives them unity, but because the legs were already kind of goldenrod color, you end up with a different color, and yet it's cohesive because it has the same colors in it. So for example, if you take a red and a yellow and you make an orange, but you put 2 parts red in it to 1 part yellow, it's going to be a much more red orange. If you put 3 parts yellow to 1 part red, it's going to be more yellow orange. But all of those will be cohesive with each other because they're all made up of the same components. Here I'm just adding a little bit of gray in the lower region of the snow flurries and our snow blobs, drifts if you must, just to add a little bit of dimension to them. You could use any color you wanted. You could use blues, purples, pinks, beige. I mean, it really just depends on the overall feel of what you want. Now, I'm not too worried that I'm making these too gray, because I'm going to go back in with my white Posca pen and add some highlights to those. I think this picture would be very pretty to add some stickles there. I have to admit, I like glitter and those kind of things, but I don't often put them. I put them on some pages, but on a page like this one, I don't know. Maybe a little wink of Stella would be really pretty on those snowdrifts and in those little blobs. But once again, I think a lot of what's going on for me in this particular picture is, when I was coloring this, my mom was either in the hospital or just gotten out and went into kind of a medical rehab kind of facility to help her gather her strength. And they do a lot of physical therapy. They also teach her different ways to, to do your dishes, different ways to stand, how to accomplish tasks more efficiently, and, and help her maintain her independence and stuff. So I think my mind's been a little bit on that. And so you know, I'm kind of like, I'm enjoying coloring, but you know, your mind's kind of divided a little bit. Now here I'm laying down this sand. I know I'm going to be using a watercolor. I'm going to use the Jazzydoodledesigns watercolor, and I apologize to you guys. I don't normally do this, but for some reason on this video I did it twice. I hit record and I hit it twice. And the reason I know I did this is because I caught myself doing it once. And so I think I'm recording. I record a segment and I look up and I go to shut it off and it starts recording and I'm like, ugh. So my sincerest apologies. But so I don't think I have the coverage of using the watercolor. But I basically just apply it with my water brush and I go over all of that part that we just colored with sand. And I let it dry. Now I'm going in with just this cheap flat brush, and it's like a synthetic brush, and I'm in that little container there that you see the blue. What that is there's like a cotton pad, not a cotton ball, but the flat ones like you remove makeup with. I just put that in the bottom of that, and then I saturate it with Gamsol. And by putting the Gamsol on that small little container with the cotton pad, I'm not exposing myself to all the vapors of having the whole bottle open. Also, I can kind of tap off my brush so I don't get quite as much Gamsol. You'll still see me tap off a little bit on your napkin because you don't want to use too much. You don't want your paper to look, it can look a little wet. You don't want it to look like saturated wet. And I'm basically just going in, and this is sped up at 3 times speed. So if you want to slow it down and take a look, but this is at 3 times speed because I didn't want to bore your socks off. But I'm just basically going over all the colored pencil to blend it a little bit. But that cotton ball thing really works well. And I'm not picking up the blue, so it just stains the cotton ball. But then periodically, I will just pull that out and put a new one in. Now here I'm going in with that sepia and just going all around the outside of this plaque and just the outside ring of the circle. I do not do the inner circle. That was a choice that I consciously made because I felt like I wanted it to be more, I don't know, maybe more like a shadow and less like, I think if you would have done it on both sides, it would make that gold look raised. If that's the direction that you want to go, that's certainly possible. Once again, maybe I was just taking the the shortcut out. I don't know, but I do know that when I colored it, I made that conscious decision to do that. You could also use black here, and you could use a fine liner instead of the colored pencil. It's up to you. It kind of depends on how stark you want it to be. And then just turn your book so that you have the best angle to get the crispest line. You'll see I didn't go all the way around in a circle. So here I have a 0.7 Posca. This is the little baby Posca, and I'm excited to have these. So thanks again to the person that sent me these as a Christmas gift. That kind of support for the channel is tremendous and honestly makes me tear up when I think about it. That you guys would think of me or care enough about my channel to promote it that way. But anyway, I'm using this just to give little highlights to those little snow flurries so that they don't blend into the background too much. And those are just like little dots. Now on the snow, I chose to eliminate the black line on the top of the snow. And I do that by doing kind of a little dabbing motion over the line and then kind of smoothing that ink out a little bit. I did not get rid of the black line on the bottom, just on the top. But I feel like this adds a little bit of pop of color, and then I do little dots just below it. Now, you can add the white Posca to your highlight or not, depending on how much you want them to pop out. Here I use a black Posca to go over his eye. I let that dry before I add my white dot to it. So here I'm just kind of reevaluating, seeing what else I need to do, going over some of those lines again, making sure that they, aren't popping out. And then I make sure that I'm tilting the page to see if it was shiny. It still was a little bit. So off camera, I do the little pop of white. So here's the before, and here's the after. Thank you for watching another video from Jazzydoodledesigns. If you enjoy adult coloring content, please consider subscribing. You can now find me on Instagram and Facebook as well. I welcome all comments and suggestions. Don't forget to like the video before you go. And until next time, take care.